All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're tackling one of the most famous textual enigmas out there, the story of Dhul Qarnayn. But we're going to do this in a completely different way. We're putting aside all the historical theories and focusing only on the text itself, treating it as our one and only source of evidence.
So, who was Dhul Qarnayn? I mean, this is the question, right? It's puzzled thinkers for centuries. Was he a king, a prophet, or something else entirely? The text gives us this larger-than-life figure, but his true identity remains a genuine mystery.
So here's our approach. We're going to do some pure textual forensics. I want you to think of this whole narrative like a crime scene. Every single word, every pattern, every strange detail is a potential clue. We're not hunting for a historical person. We're hunting for an identity hidden right inside the text.
And like any good investigation, where do you start? You start with the name. Dhul Qarnayn is our first big clue. So, what does it actually mean? And what can it tell us about this mystery? Okay, let's break this down. The name's linguistic root, QRN, is all about the idea of two-ness or duality, coupling things, joining them, pairing them up. This idea of two is like a key that unlocks three totally different ways to understand the character.
Possibility number one is the most direct, the most literal interpretation. Dhul Qarnayn could just mean the one with two horns, or maybe the one of two ends, which suggests something physical, maybe even geographical.
Okay, but what if it's not about space? What if it's about time? In Arabic, qarn can also mean an age or an era. So Dhul Qarnayn could actually mean the one of the two ages, pointing to a figure that somehow spans two completely different periods of history.
And then we have our third path, which is way more metaphorical. Here, two horns could be a symbol for a twofold strength or a dual kind of power. This one isn't about geography or time. It's about the very nature of Dhul Qarnayn's power. It's definitely the most abstract of the three.
Now, each of these ideas comes with a trade-off. You can see it here, the literal two ends meaning. It's easy to accept, the interpretive cost is low, but it doesn't really explain a whole lot about the story. On the other hand, the two ages meaning has huge explanatory power, but it comes at a high cost. It basically forces us to see Dhul Qarnayn as a concept, not a person, and that's a big leap.
Okay, with the name analyzed, it's time to move to the next phase of our investigation. Based on all the clues in the text, immense power, control over resources, journeys to the absolute ends of the earth, we've got three primary suspects for who or what Dhul Qarnayn really is.
And these three possibilities, they come directly from the text itself. Suspect number one, an empowered human, maybe a powerful king. Suspect number two, a symbolic representation of a whole civilization. And suspect number three, a totally abstract concept, like time itself, just personified.
So first up, the empowered human, a literal person. This theory fits really well with the dialogue and the actions, right? He talks to people, he builds a barrier, it's the most intuitive read. But here's the pressure point. How could one single person possibly reach the literal rising and setting places of the sun? The scale of power just feels way beyond human capacity.
All right, next up, a civilization. This theory is great because it easily explains the massive scale and the huge long-term projects. That makes a lot of sense. The challenge, though, is that you have to take what reads like a personal story about one individual and interpret it as a grand symbol for an entire society.
And finally, our most radical suspect, an abstract concept, like time. Now this is the wild card, but it explains the structural parts of the story, like reaching absolute limits, perfectly. The downside, it comes at the highest cost. You have to reinterpret every action, every line of dialogue as a purely symbolic representation of some cosmic process. That's a huge interpretive leap.
So we have our three suspects, an empowered man, a civilization, and a cosmic concept. How in the world do we decide? Well, we need a decisive test. We need a hidden clue, something often overlooked, that can put each of these theories to the test. And lucky for us, there is one.
And here it is. This is our smoking gun. In a related narrative, there's a structure that's built with enormous effort, and then it repeatedly disappears for no apparent physical reason. This bizarre pattern has to be explained. It's a major piece of the puzzle.
Let's just break this pattern down. You have accumulation, they're building something, then there's a stop. Then, when they come back to it, they discover the work has just vanished. And this cycle repeats. It's a cycle of progress cancellation.
Any theory about Dhul Qarnayn that's going to hold water must have a good explanation for this.
Okay, now for the interrogation. We're going to take each of our suspects, the human, the civilization, and the abstract concept, and we're going to confront them with this new piece of evidence. How well can they explain this bizarre cycle of vanishing progress?
And this table really gets to the heart of it. For the human model, the disappearance is just an accident. A wall collapses, erosion happens. For the civilization model, it's a familiar historical pattern, like a society collapsing and losing its knowledge. But for the abstract concept model, the disappearance isn't an accident at all. It's a fundamental mechanism of the system itself. It's a feature, not a bug, a cyclical reset. And this is exactly why this clue is so powerful. A recurring, materially unexplained disappearance? That just naturally points you away from a simple, literal, material explanation. It suggests this story is operating on a different kind of logic, a symbolic one. So after putting our suspects through this decisive test, the whole balance of probability has, it's shifted dramatically, and it's pointing us toward a pretty powerful conclusion. And you can see that shift right here. The empowered human model, its explanatory power just plummets when faced with this clue. The symbolic civilization model does a much better job, but look at the abstract concept model. Its explanatory power is the highest because it doesn't just explain the disappearance, it incorporates it as core evidence. So our textual analysis leads us to a pretty clear verdict. The identity of Dhul Qarnayn is far more likely to be symbolic or structural than a literal person. And that changes everything about how we read this story. Maybe it's not a historical account, but a parable about power, progress, and time itself. The human suspect is now officially the least likely of the three.
But, and this is a big but, the case isn't closed. Not by a long shot. There is one final crucial piece of evidence that we haven't examined yet, and it has the potential to change everything all over again. The role of divine will. How does this final clue fit into our investigation? Does it support our verdict, or does it completely overturn it? Well, we're going to have to explore that in the next part of our investigation.